मेरा पूरा नाम Atta Rabbani. My father had two childless marriages. His wives, both of the wives died, and even my own mother, after his marriage with her, for about 10 to 12 years, he didn't have a child. So at that time, being quite prominent in Jinnah and having his status there, they must have tried all sorts of dua as well as dawa. But it didn't work for 10 years or 12 years. And then I was born. And after me, there were 5 more children. 3 sisters and 3 sons. To be quite frank, I have no love lost for books. Throughout my academic career, I never liked to read. My focus was on outdoor sports. I was in Islamia High School, Jinnah City, where I represented the school in cricket, football, and was captain of the rugged touch team, besides being a Boy Scout. And I also had the distinction to captain the Jalandhar Division schools in the Interdivisional Cricket Championship of the Punjab. And then when I matriculated from there, my father applied for me in the Government College, Lahore. I got the admission and even a room was allotted to me in the new hostel. But then my father decided that instead of being in Lahore, I should go to Amritsar, where my cousin, Mr Rabbani, was a session judge. He thought that I should stay with him, and that would be better to keep an eye on me at the same time. It would be easier for me to live there. So I joined MO College, Amritsar, where I had the distinction of being quite friendly with Professor Faiz, and the principal, Aide-de Tasir. And I again represented the college in cricket, but I also represented the college in football on their outside matches on special invitation. I joined the Indian Air Force in 1941. And I did my initial flying in Northern India Flying Club, Lahore, known as the NIFC. And then for my initial flying training, I went to Skandarabad, Begumpet, Hyderabad, Deccan, and then from there to Ambala for my final things. See, my focus was on outdoor sports and all these things, so I was not interested in reading and books and all that, and at the same time very much in politics. So I only had heard of Mr. Jinnah as one of the top Muslim leaders of Muslim India. But it was in Aligarh for the first time when I physically saw and heard him. And from there onwards, he more or less grew on me. During the elections, 46 elections, Mr. Jinnah made a call asking for silver bullets to fight the elections. At that time I was in Burma, taking part in the operations there as a fighter pilot in number 10 RIF squadron. So there, disregarding my rules and regulations and strict forbiddance to to take part in any politics and all, I started to collect these so-called silver bullets for Quaid's elections. Then my squadron moved back to Calcutta. Not exact Calcutta, about 30 miles from Calcutta. So I continued my fund collections there. And then during our meetings or during our social gatherings, I happened to meet Shahid Sohrawardi a number of times. He was the Chief Minister of Undivided Bengal at that time and Secretary of the Muslim League, Bengal Muslim League. So when I had enough money with me, Quaid was to come to Calcutta to wind up the election campaign of the Bengal Muslim League. So when I came to know of this, I spoke to Sohrawardi that said, I have collected a pouch of silver bullets for the Quaid as he asked for, and I would like you to present it to him on my behalf. He was very kind. He said, why don't you like to do it? Wouldn't you, these were his words, wouldn't you like to do it yourself? I said, sir, nothing like it if that could happen. He said, that could be arranged. So whenever Quaid visited Calcutta, he used to stay at the residence of Mr Asfahani on Park Road. So Shahid Sohrawardi fixed up the time and the date for me to be presented to the Quaid. So I reached the spot on the fixed date and time, and I found Mr Shahid Sohrawardi himself was there too. So he introduced me to the Quaid. And so I said, sir, I've got some pouch, a pouch of the silver bullets that I've collected. It was 27,000, mind you, it was in 45, 46, 27,500 some odd rupees and 10 annas I can't forget. So Quaid was very kind. He got up, he shook hands with me. This was the first time that I shook hands with the Quaid, and he said it's a lot of money and it will come handy in the elections. But then at the same time, see, mind you what he said, I think this should be written in golden letters and it should be a lesson to the rest of Pakistan. He pointing out his index finger as it was his habit towards me, and he said, don't do it again. So, he said, you know, you could have been court-martialed for it and dismissed from service. Thereby saying, if we read in between the lines, not in between, it's quite apparent. If we read what he said was that there is no scope for any military action or military intervention. It was a great thing because, a man, he was so blunt and so thorough and so straightforward that knowing that as a young man, I was about 20 at that time or something like that, that I had put my whole career at stake in collecting that money, he didn't hesitate to tell me the truth on my face, that don't do it in future. As I said, that Quaid started to grow on me, and I had a desire in me to serve the Quaid or to be with him in any capacity. And all that I could think at that time was that I could only be his personal pilot. But then I used to think that this is not possible because he's a politician and I am in the British Air Force and all these things. That's not possible. So it's just a dream sort of a thing. So that stayed the dream in my mind all the time. But then what happened was, actually my selection as Aide-de the Quaid is a fairy tale story. With all this background and my love and affection and regards for the Quaid, But I couldn't do anything about it. It couldn't happen. But God, I thought, listened to my prayers, and He changed the whole spectrum of the thing. Now, my last appointment before independence was as Officer Commanding Indian Air Training Corps, Muslim University, Aligarh. When I took over, that was, I think, middle of 46 or some, or towards, must be middle or a little later. So it was a tradition with the old Aligharians who were in some position to always visit as far as possible, at least Aligarh once a year. So in the interim government, when Liaquat Ali Khan was the finance minister and deputy prime minister, and Sardar Abdullah Nishtar, who was the communication minister, both were Aligharians, they decided to visit Aligarh as a routine visit. So in those days, it was a tradition in the university that whenever any of these VIPs used to visit the university, they used to ask the UOTC. I wonder if you know about that, University Officers Training Corps. It was a sort of linkage with the army, sort of a thing, for the training in the university and all that. And but this time, when I joined Indian Air Training Corps there, I asked the Vice Chancellor, I said, sir, you have been giving this honor to UOTC always, but what about this time giving a chance to the Air Force? So he agreed, he said, fair enough. So on the arrival of these two dignitaries from Delhi, I arranged for my Indian Air Training Corps to present them a guard of honor, and naturally the usual march past in it. Now after the march past, they stayed back with us for a cup of tea. It was for about, I think, 25 or 30 minutes or something like that. And during this time, Liaquat Ali Khan was all the time talking to me about the Air Force and about its various activities. So I thought that, well, I have the honor of meeting today for the first time the number 2 man in the hierarchy of the Muslim India, and that's it. But I didn't know that this was the first step in realizing my dream. The next day, Vice Chancellor called me and congratulated me on this thing. So I thought, well, that's okay, but that's the end of it. I happened to take my annual leave in July, and I had decided to spend half of my leave of mine in Jalandhar with my parents, and half with the parents of my wife. Her father was posted in Rawalpindi. And when towards the last week of my fortnight in Pindi, I got 3 telegrams from Air Headquarters India, what we used to call it signals, asking me to report back immediately to Air Headquarters India. Now, it was, it used to happen that whenever, they used to call these people from leave just like that, and when they come to their headquarters or the headquarters wherever it was, even in the army, and they used to say, okay, why have you come? Who had asked you to come? What is the purpose, and all these things. And so I thought that they always spoil your leave, so I'm not going to pay any attention to it. I ignored those. And according to my plan, I came back in the first week of August to Jalandhar to spend another 3-4 days with my parents. My plan was to catch this train at 4 o'clock, on the 4th of August. Now the dates are very important. 4th of August 1947 at 9 o'clock at night. And to reach Delhi on the 5th of August. And in that way, and report to air headquarters. In that way, I used to say 1 day instead of coming a day earlier and reporting to the unit. So that would save me a day. So that was my plan. Delhi was about 2 hours run from Panipat. And when the train wheeled in on platform number 4, I still remember, it was 8 o'clock in the morning. And when it stopped, there was the voice of my wife's younger uncle, who was a major in the GHQ there. He said, Atta yaar, where have you been? Well, we were not expecting him to receive us. So we were a little, the idea was that I'll leave my wife with him and I myself go to air headquarters in New Delhi. So I was rather intrigued to find him there. And the words, Atta yaar, where were you? They have been looking for you for the last 2 weeks. So I said, yes, I received those 3 telegrams, but I ignored them. So I became a little apprehensive. I said, okay, what is the matter? He said, you have been selected as Aide-de to the Quaid. So that gave me a lot of blood pressure, my blood going up my head and all these things. So I started asking, what's the situation now? What is the situation now? You see, I was managing the baggage with the coolies in the compartment. I was still in, while he was standing outside. He said, I don't know. Everything was there till 12 o'clock last night. So when I came out and while coming out of the railway station, I was quite anxious to find it out. I said, what happened? He said, I don't know, but you better go to air headquarters and meet Jinnah straight away. So when the barracks came, I asked the driver to stop the car and jumped out and ran to Jinnah's office. Now Jinnah's pet phrase was, "Vogues will always be vogues." So when he looked at me, he said, "Vogues will always be vogues. What had happened to you?" I told him the story. He said, "Well, it's all very well now, but you ran up to Chaudhry Mohammad Ali." So Chaudhry Sahab asked me, he said, "Where were you? Because they sent you 3 telegrams." So I told him, I said, this was the thing, and I ignored them. He said, well, now Nawabzada Liaquat Ali Khan is waiting in Gulirana, so you better rush there. So I went to Gulirana and I sent my card in. A liveried chap came out and took me in, and I had hardly perched myself on the sofa in the drawing room when I heard the thick voice of Liaquat Ali Khan, "Rabbani, what are you doing there? Why don't you come here and join us?" So he was sitting at the lunch table with his wife, Rana Liaquat Ali, and their 2 children, and another comparatively young man of about 40-45 from the Ministry of Finance. So when I went there, Begum Liaquat Ali asked me to join us for a meal. So I hesitated, and Liaquat came back. He said, "Rabbani, you seem to have forgotten your Aligarh manners, because in Aligarh we never wait for the second invitation to join a meal. So sit down." So I sat down, and I was excited to be with them. So then during his during the lunch, he said, how would you like to be, this was the first time officially it came up, how would you like to be ADC to the Quaid? I said, this is my dream. And I will be too happy and all these things. He said, all right. Then it was confirmed that I'm still there. So I couldn't eat much, naturally excited and all that. And when getting up after the meals, he murmured to himself, let me check up with Mr. Jinnah, he wanted to see you. So he went and after 2 minutes came back, he said, the old man wants to see you.